Welcome to our second shop talk, where we gather some great musicians and artists and have some ridiculously nerdy conversations. So if we can kind of go around, we'll introduce ourselves and we'll get started. So I'll just kind of go first. I'm Jeff Chodil. I'm a classical pianist working out here in Florida, and my professional life looks like teaching piano, arranging, and composing music, accompanying all the different singers, instrumentalists, choirs, ensembles, orchestras, performing solo and champion music. So basically, I have cause to learn music for all of those things, performing solo with different people in ensembles, arranging music, all those different things are how and why I need to know how to learn music. So let's go around and how about Sarah? Do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Sarah Coit. I'm originally from Spring Hill, Florida, but I live in Philadelphia, and I'm a professional operatic mezzo soprano. And that's what I learned music for, is whatever anybody asks me to do with that. Yep.
Okay, Lindsey?
So, hi, I'm Lindsay, and I'm in Miami right now. And I grew up in Connecticut, so from whence did I hail? That's what that's where my heart is. But I'm in Miami, and I perform for chamber music concerts and church services all the time. So learning music for that. I'm learning music for different auditions for PhD DMA programs. And I do summer festivals, so I learn music for that, and just personal projects, learn music for that. I'm also a teacher, so I have to learn the music I'm teaching, but hopefully I already know that.
Very cool. And Michael?
My name is Michael Pruitt. I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, and somehow made my way all the way over here to St. Petersburg, Florida. I am a hairdresser by profession, but I did private voice study in Gainesville, and then continued on in for a little bit in South America with a classical bend. I moved to Tampa, sang with Opera Tampa for about 10 years under Anton Coppola. And then went back to community theater. I book shows with community groups in Tampa and St. Pete, and I also have a couple of professional and semi-professional companies that I book shows with, and we do some traveling around. So I generally find myself studying for those things, either for musicals or Spanish opera. I don't do a whole lot of Italian opera anymore. Of course, I do like to pull those out occasionally to practice, just to make sure I can still make those sounds. And then, aside from those things, I have a small handful of students, so it's always good to be up on whatever they're singing. So that's my shtick.
Great, awesome. And thanks for talking about your experience before. That's what I kind of wanted to get into next, a little bit about some of our early music learning experience and kind of what it looked like as we followed our path, as we prepared to embark to professional music making. So again, for me, I did the entire, you're 6 years old when you start your piano lessons, like most of us were, and some of us stuck with them, some of us didn't. I even took a little bit of a break from piano after a while and only came back in high school when I discovered classical music. I discovered Liszt, and Liszt opened up the door, and the rest is history from there. But high school, did the high school musicals. That was my kind of first real serious music making experience. And from there, I went on to undergrad, went to Illinois Wesleyan up in Illinois, Bloomington Normal, and got my undergrad there. And came to USF in Florida, and yeah, just followed that kind of path. bachelor's and master's in music, and all the different experiences along the way that kind of help you learn all the tips and tricks of how to learn music effectively and learn music quickly. So that's kind of my experience from early music learning to becoming a professional. How about you, Sarah?
I took piano when I was a kid. I've with varying degrees of success. And I did flute in middle school actually, which is a chapter I don't often remember, but again, with varying degrees of success. But I liked it. And what I really wanted to do was theater, straight theater. And late middle school, early high school, I was taking acting classes, and the guy's like, I was living in a small town in Florida. The only game in town was really community theater, and they just did golden age musical theater. So he's like, well, if you want to do this, you should probably take some voice lessons. And I'm like, okay. So I went, and I was actually not very happy about it. I was like, oh no, this is going to be rough. I'm going to be terrible. And my first lesson, the whole hour, it was like trying to find something I knew so she could hear if I could sing. And then after that, I just really loved it. She was a choral conducting doctoral student from Stony Brook, and she was just like really into that repertoire and was teaching the Italian art songs and stuff to these kids who wanted to belt musical theater. And I just really enjoyed that. And I did multiple years of shows in that community theater, learning that music, and ended up at USF with a dual degree in music studies and theater performance, where Jeff was very lovely, and he played my junior recital. and during that time at USF, I did some covers and choruses at Opera Tampa and at St. Pete Opera. And so we may have met, Michael.
Yeah, we may have.
I was in Cav Pag and Aida. I was in those last two Coppola shows.
I missed the last two Aidas. I missed the last two Aidas. I did Cav Pag twice with Opera Tampa, and one of them would have been in the early 2000s, and the last one would have been right before I left, which was just before the last Aida that they did.
We may have been in that show because I was one of those late ad people. They added a bunch of USF students into the chorus again, so I didn't meet they were just like, we need bodies.
With Coppola still. With Coppola.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Then we were there.
Yeah, well, we were in the show together. Well, there we go.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, and then after that, I went.
Seeing you again.
Yes, good to see you too. And then after that, I went and got my master's at the University of Michigan, and post that, real things started.
Very cool. Yeah, it's amazing how much kind of a small world this all is. Just discovered recently that Sarah, you and one of my good friends from Illinois Wesleyan know each other in NOLA. So, on to you, Lindsey. What was your early music learning experience, and what was your journey like to become professional?
Okay, so in Connecticut, I started violin when I was 3. I started Suzuki music when I was like 1.5, and the story is that my dad was like, what's that? Like Japanese school, like what's that? And had no idea why his kids needed to learn music. Not that he's not musical, but just the idea of so young. But my mom was really adamant about it and put us all in the school, which is like a mile away from my house. And fast forward, I still am in touch with my teachers from there. They're amazing. So I do feel like very supported in my musical journey from the start in that way, that it's really community for me. So I studied there until I was, I think, 8. And then I went to study with a woman named Kathy Dorn in Danbury, which is like a highway ride away. So, a little bit more of an investment of getting there, and, the whole thing, the parents that drive their kids every week. And my parents put a lot in for me to be able to do music. And through her, I started participating in a youth orchestra, which is where I really got exposed to other kids performing at a high level, which was really inspiring for me. That was a formative experience for sure. I played in that orchestra for 8 years. We toured Europe and played in Carnegie Hall multiple times. I met my current boyfriend there. We were stand partners in high school.
Mhm.
And we didn't start dating until 4 years ago, but that friendship began. And there's nothing like connecting through sharing a stand in music and, you know, working together and all of that. So after high school, I went to do my undergrad at Western Connecticut State University. And I had been studying with the professor from there since high school. And he's actually married to the first violin teacher that I had when I was 8. I just kind of moved on to her husband. And he is amazing, so accomplished. And he was the first violinist of the Manhattan String Quartet for 30 years. I just had a lesson with him about 30 minutes ago. I was playing the Shostakovich Violin Concerto for him, and he traveled to Russia to play Shostakovich string quartets right after or during at the conclusion of the Cold War as part of delegations. So he's like the source on us playing Shostakovich and Russian music. So just to play for him tonight was like, again, fully supported community. I'm still in contact with these people that have meant so much to me, but also just continually learning from them. I'll go a little faster here. So then after undergrad, I took 2 years off, studying with a teacher, Katie Lansdale, in Hartford from the Hart School. Awesome teacher. And then I went to USF, where I met Jeff. And I studied with Carolyn Stewart, and ended up sticking around for an extra year because Tampa was so great and school was awesome. And yeah, I did another degree in conducting, instrumental conducting, which was amazing. And after that, moved to Miami. My boyfriend was living here, and figured I would figure it out as far as getting gigs and looking for a job. And I spent a year really like on the ground. I found opera gigs. I found any gig there was that I could do, and eventually found a teaching job at an amazing Catholic school where I teach violin, where all the girls learn violin when they turn 5. So it's a pretty fantastic situation. And again, so supportive and community oriented. So that's where I am.
Very cool. Great journey there. Now, Michael, you talked a little bit about this in our introduction, but anything else you want to add about your early experiences and kind of gearing up towards making music at a professional level?
So I didn't do the college track. I did actually ask for piano lessons when I was a kid. Unfortunately, piano lessons were not in the cards when I was a little boy in Hawaii. I got a ukulele and some hula lessons, which were great, but they weren't really what I was interested in, so I didn't stick with them. I had some very basic music. I'd had chorus through high school and whatnot. I will say I had a high school teacher who, she was the American Lit teacher and she was also the theater teacher. And I'm pretty sure the first year that she came to my high school out in the desert in California, that it was the first theater teacher that they'd ever had at that school. But she talked me into auditioning for a show, and I loved it. And so that led to something else, that led to something else, that led to community theater. At some point after graduating high school, I moved to Florida and immediately looked for a community theater group. I ended up with the Gainesville Community Playhouse, shout out, wonderful people. A very good friend of mine who is also a wonderful singer, she would probably be somebody that you might want to have on one of your talks. Regina Torres is in Jacksonville. She sat me down one day and she said, "Michael, you've got such a big vibrato. You might want to see a teacher and work on that." She was very kind. And so she pointed me towards a woman named Deborah Spurlick in Gainesville. And I spent a few years studying with her. And then I left Gainesville at the tender young age of 27 and ran away to South America to join a circus called La Tarumba. And while I was in Lima, I found a teacher named Manuel Cuadros Bar. And I was really lucky to be able to study with him for a little while. Unfortunately, the circus gig didn't last too terribly long. I ended up coming back, but I moved to Tampa and then St. Pete. As soon as I got here in '02, I joined Opera Tampa, and if I were to, I would say I had three teachers. I had Deborah, Maestro Cuadros, and Opera Tampa. Was hugely educational as far as singing. Yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell, a large nutshell.
Nice. Well, we're kind of all a bit of nutshells here, but that's amazing. You really did run off with the circus.
The moral of that story is if you're going to ask the universe for something, try to be really specific. I wasn't. And so when the universe answered what I asked for, it was a circus in Peru, and I had to go because I had asked for it. So, yeah.
Well, let that be a lesson, kids. Be very specific in what you ask for, because you might just end up in a circus in Peru.
Feel free to ask the universe for anything, but make sure you know what you're asking for.
What was your skill?
I was singing.
Oh, you're singing. Okay, cool. That's awesome.
I was singing. I guess I should have made that clear. I wasn't
like, what did he do?
Height rope walking. They were a wonderful group, and they were a small group trying to be more like Cirque du Soleil. And so they had brought in this rock band, and the rock band had trained to follow the act. And then they wanted a singer who could follow the band and sound acrobatic, vocally acrobatic, I guess.
Cool. So for this one, this shop talk, kind of the subtitle would be from page to stage, for a pithy title here. And so starting off as we set our stage here, thinking about kind of the projects we have as far as when we learn music for the purpose of performing it, I just want to kind of ask and get a sense of what's kind of a normal timeline for you, like about how long do you have typically from your first exposure to the music to being out on stage performing it? But what timeline do you normally look at here?
It depends on what it is you're performing, of course. For myself, if I have a gig where I have to sing 2 or 3 songs and there are songs that are in my repertoire, then a few days, right? I guess you just bust those things out and you get them ready and you already know them. If you've got a brand new script in your hand with music to learn, we've all probably done a month, but that's not optimal. Like 2 months, 3 months is nice for a new script with music to learn, I think. 3 months.
It all depends, but sometimes things come up and you have to scramble and it's stressful.
Yeah. Oh,
and then sometimes things come up that you already know and you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. I had like a whole year last year where it was like I was doing repeat roles. I was like, great, like best. Like,
sweet, right? Sweet.
Yeah.
And like Lindsey, how about you? I know that you do a lot of work sometimes with like new music that's brand new composed, having its first performance.
Yeah. There were a couple new pieces that I had to learn within a couple weeks. I met a month, a couple weeks a month. One of the composers that I worked with, and I went to perform at a festival in Italy. He invited me. It was a fresh piece for me. And I did perform it also in America. But page to stage, I think it's important to have many stages before the real big stage. So the big stage isn't the first stage. And so I used that for that concert. And I'm doing that currently for my auditions. I've been preparing, like I started the Shostakovich in earnest about 2 months ago. And I'm gonna do some either live streamed, we'll see with COVID, recitals before I record my audition tapes so that it's worked out way in advance and put in front of people as part of the process. And we'll probably get into that, but timeline, that's like 5 months.
Very cool. Yeah, and for piano, I'm all of us pianists were blessed and cursed at the same time that piano is one of the most versatile instruments. We get to work with everybody and do all the things. And so, it could be at a kind of more luxurious pace. Like at the past couple of years, I've finally gotten back to doing just solo piano recitals. Just first to make sure I could still do it, but then just a nice way to do. And preparing like a full hour and a half long recital of just solo piano repertoire from memory. Set yourself maybe 4 or 5 months to prepare for that. But at the same time, I've done work accompanying where for the big high school solo ensemble competitions, sometimes you have just insanely fast turnaround. There was one year I got a call from a music director Sunday night, and he tells me that the pianist they had already had, their normal pianist, had some medical issues, so she had to drop out last minute, and they had, it was 4 or 5 students who were performing the following morning in Gainesville. And so he was able to get me the music at about like 9 o'clock Sunday night. I had to learn 5 pieces in just a few hours, get a little bit of rest until I waking up at like 5 in the morning to drive to Gainesville and perform it all. That was about the fastest turnaround I ever had. There was, talking like, some Bach flute concerto, some other stuff there. So some of it was, some pretty involved stuff, but you just have to, cram it all in as fast as you can. And that's kind of where the learning process comes in. All the stuff we do in our preparation is what allows us then to be able to really get that done when we need to. And that's kind of what our theme is for today. But before we get to that, one little thing I also want to talk about as far as how we initialize or begin our projects. When you choose music, what do you kind of look for? How do you choose what music to learn next? That's one of the things I kind of learned a lot in my experience from especially undergrad to grad, and after that, just being more aware of kind of the price tag of pieces. Certain pieces have certain price tag, whether that's effort or time, and being aware of what kind of budget you have available to learn that music. So what do you guys look for as you choose? How do you select what music to learn next?
So for me, especially, it's just like, it's an age thing usually. It's what's appropriate for your age. If it's opera, am I believable as the character? Do I understand this? Does this fit my voice in a way that I'm not going to kill myself? Like this is, yeah, I'd like to, I feel like as singers, we get a really, a clear picture of where we're supposed to be heading and where we need to, what box we need to stay in at a certain point in time. And I think with art song, it's different because you can kind of pick what appeals to you, and that to me is different. And usually you have a little more time and luxury to do. There's not that much of the price tag is pretty much the same. It seems like there are like harder and less hard ones, but yeah, to me it's like, okay, this is what means something to me.
I think for myself, generally, I have not been the one choosing that music. It's whatever the show is that comes along. Somebody calls and says, "Hey, this is what's going on. I think I need you in this. Can you learn this? Can you learn that? How long do you need for this? How long do you need for that?" And so oftentimes that's how the new music comes up. Looking for music to sing, and like you're saying, Sarah, about things that are appropriate, thinking in those terms, is something that is more so a newer thing for me with students, because I'm doing that with them. And of course, I can look back at my teachers and recognize how they were doing that for me. But for so long, really, I mean, you know, I like to stay busy. I have up until the last 6 months. You know, for quite a while, just stayed really, really busy, and somebody's always calling with something to do, and so that's the music that I'm learning. Whatever they got, you know. I mean, I'm a hack, really. Like you know, you need some. I'll get up and sing it. What is it? I'll get up and sing it. Yeah. So they, you know, it's. I like. I've kind of worked on a reputation of being that fill-in kind of guy, like you, again, what you were talking about, Sarah, you know, with the cab pag. Like, generally, I think people locally know that if you're in a pinch, I can learn it and I can sing it, and I like being that guy. You talk about like the quickest turnaround. I had to, gosh, it's been not that long ago, maybe 2 years. 2 years ago, local conductor, teacher, piano player extraordinaire, Mr. Constantine.
Graham?
Constantine Graham. Yes. I was doing the Mikado with him, and he says, "Oh, Mr. Pruitt, I have a show I'm doing, and I've lost a baritone. Can you take care of that for me? Can you do that?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely, I can do that. What's the show? You got a book?" And he says, "I'll get a book to you." So I'm like, "Oh, great, Constantine wants me to do a show. I'm going to step in. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to fill in. It's going to be great." I get the book. It's Alma Viva in the Marriage of Figaro in English, and I had 6 weeks. And I can tell you, I have never been so terrified in my life. It was one of the scariest things that I've ever done. And if you're familiar with Constantine, the first time that I went in to practice the part with him, and he gave me that look like, "Mr. Pruitt, you don't know this music." And I felt horrible, right? But I will tell you, Mr. Constantine Graham, after giving me a very well-deserved dressing down, that night he spent however much time it took him to do to sit and record himself playing my part and singing, so that I would have that. And so to segue into how you learn a part, I listened to that day and night on repeat constantly. I put it in my earphones when I went to bed and listened to it in my sleep. I had it playing in the car. My boyfriend, who you see walking around here, hated me. "Can we please listen to something other than whatever that is?" And I said, "No, we can't. I'm listening to this. If you don't like that, then you need to be somewhere else. But this is happening right now. And until I get on stage and sing this show, I'm going to be listening to it over and over again." Constantine, a few days before opening, he's like, "Mr. Pruitt, I appreciate all the work you put into it. You've still got your tiny little book. I write everything out in tiny little miniature, you know, everything. You've still got that book in your hand, Mr. Pruitt. Are you gonna put that book away before we open the show?" And I said, "Yes." It was in my pocket, but I didn't open the book. But you know, like, that's part of my thing. Like, I have to write everything down, and then this little book becomes sort of magic to me. And as long as it's somewhere nearby, I don't have to look at it. As long as it's somewhere nearby when I'm performing, then I feel better.
I do the same thing. I can't perform without the score sitting in the dressing room. It doesn't have to be open. If it's there, it's there.
It just has to be there. It just has to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 6 weeks for Alma Viva. It was a lot of fun.
Mozart Russet, my God.
Oh, yeah. Let's not have a discussion about recitative. But that is one of my most unfavorite things in the world, recitative. I mean, when you do it correctly, you feel pretty awesome, right? And when you go through, I mean, like, what is it? Like all of Act 2 is recitative. But yeah, I'd rather not do that stuff.
Okay, then moratorium on recitative. That's a tacitative
Right.
then.
This,
Ooh,
yeah.
How about you, Lindsay? Want to add on?
Sure. I'm trying to think back. I mean, for current times, like the music that I chose for these auditions, part of it is obviously necessitated by the requirements of the schools, um, and the level of the repertoire that they're looking for, and kind of a consideration of that. Don't want to play the same thing everybody else is playing either. Um, but when I really came down to it for choosing, for example, the Shostakovich, there is my, relationship with Shostakovich through my teacher that is really powerful, and there's something there. But at the beginning of quarantine, like listening to that concerto every time brought tears. And it's such a powerful piece of music that I was like, I need to learn this. And it's just kind of sparked by that has kind of gotten me obsessed. And it's super intricate and complicated, and it's almost, why am I doing this? This is crazy, but I can't stop. It's just so great. So stuff like that. I've been studying the Bach C major sonatas, and pretty much I'm always working on a Bach sonata of the six, or partita. And the C major has been kind of on my music stand for the last few years. And so there's something about that one that I just keep coming back to. So I was like, I'm gonna pick that for this season. And it has the longest fugue he wrote for any instrument or group of instruments. So it's like climbing Mount Everest. And I just feel like I need to do it. It's an obligation. And it's just so beautiful when it works. So yeah, I don't think that I'm the most practical person when I pick music. It's more this other romantic and kind of obsessed quality that I make it happen.
Nice, and that's definitely a fun way to do it for sure. One last little quick point before we dive fully into our entire learning process here. Thinking kind of about the idea of the price tag of a piece as we budget our time and how we choose there. Do you have any kind of white whale pieces you want to learn, but just it's intimidating to build up the time or the effort needed? Like for me, the Liszt B minor sonata. It's just a single movement, half an hour long, intense romantic piano virtuoso playing without a break. That was one of the pieces which brought me back to piano when I was in high school. That piece by Liszt and La Campanella. I learned La Campanella, but I'm still saving up for Liszt because I know that budget-wise, the price tag of learning that sonata is easily going to be an entire year of my life. So, do you guys have any like big white whale pieces like that that you want to do one day, but it's so imposing how much it'll cost you to do it that you keep on putting it off?
I mean, uh, I've had a love-hate relationship with Rossini for a long time. And I just, the last show I did, we closed down the day of our final dress, was a Barber of Seville in Salt Lake City. And I hadn't done it since my master's, but I was like, oh man, this is the first time I'd picked it back up, and I felt nice about it, and it was like the most fun. But I mean, talking about what Lindsay was talking about, yeah, during quarantine, I'm like, well, I've got this time. I don't really have anything to be learning for. Why don't I just try something hard? So I've been working on Cenerentola, which I've been looking at forever in my life, but I've never brought out into public life. And kind of dipping the tip of my toe into the Strauss pool, just like, but I mean, that to me is really, Strauss is really intimidating. And I was doing an opera in Czech this summer, which we didn't actually get to do, but they said they're moving it to next year. But my
I don't know if any of y'all have had experience with Czech, but there's like the word stresses change the rhythms. It's like very confusing. Yeah, so I was, I was really worried about that, but I'm glad I have a little more time to like get it under my belt in a way that I feel comfortable with. But, like,
Like flashbacks to when I had you learn Russian.
yes, I'd had it all like translated. And you're going through it, but you're just like, I know I'm not doing this fully right, and I won't know until I'm with a coach, and that's not going to be for a bit. So yeah, it's scary. Yeah.
I don't know if I have any what I would call a white whale or in terms of I guess roles that I would be looking to do or I right before quarantine I was supposed to do pirates in Tarpon Springs, and I was going to sing the Pirate King, and that is certainly a bucket list part. So of the shows that were canceled over quarantine, that is the only one that has been rescheduled. However, it's been rescheduled for November of 21. So I have time. It's good. But that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited and looking forward to that. But after leaving Opera Tampa, I did gigs where I was singing classical stuff for a while, but I was just looking to sing something different. I wanted to get back into doing some Broadway stuff. There was just so much of modern Broadway that I had missed because I had focused on the classical music for so long. And so coming back, there were all these shows that I had no idea about. Hamilton I didn't know Hamilton. I didn't know a lot of things. The last big full production, I would say, that I did was a Broadway show called Brooklyn, and I got to sing the role of the narrator in the show. The Music Man. He's just called the Music Man. But the role was clearly written for a person of color with a gospel background, and I had to have some very serious conversations with the director, who was incredible, Derek Baxter, about how to be authentic with that and not feel like I was culturally appropriating or trying to sound like a black guy. He was really, really terrific, and he said, as long as you're honest with yourself and you maintain your personal integrity, then don't worry about it. You'll be just fine. And so learning to sing that kind of stuff, which the opera teachers in my head are like, what are you doing with your voice? Why are you? But they're all this sort of growling and pushing and head voice and squeaking and screaming. Wonderful stuff. There's so much new music out there. So I don't have that white whale per se, but I'm definitely still looking for new fun stuff out there.
And Lindsey, it sounds like you're checking off a couple bucket list items with the Shostakovich and Bach there, but anything else? Is there anything maybe at the top of your list that one of these days you're going to get around to?
I think one thing I want to be able to do is play through all the 24 Paganini Caprices. People who can do that in a concert are just like beasts. So I would like to be able to do that one day. Also doing all the Bachs. Those kind of marathon things are just very impressive to me. And me doing a full Bach and a full concerto back to back, which I did for some of the USF recitals. You're tired after that. So, yeah, I think that those kind of marathon things are very cool. It's not like something I'm planning to do next year or anything, but as far as pieces in general, they're just I haven't learned all of the kind of standard repertoire, and I'm really excited about going back to school to be able to really get through what I haven't yet in a supportive environment.
Well, yeah, that's definitely one thing I miss too is being in that concentrated environment where you can really just dig into all the music and that's all you're doing there. It was such a special time the more I look back on it. Uh, but getting into kind of our normal working routine, when we start a new piece, we have the role selected or we have the piece selected. Like, what does your week one look like? Do you, like listen to recordings of, your part or just recordings in general, get different viewpoints of it? Do you go and do the research route? Do you just kind of like sight read through it, kind of get a sense of what parts are going to be easier, what parts are going to take more work? What does your week one look like with a new piece?
For me, day one is my favorite highlighting ritual. I love to do that. And if nothing else, it just gets you a look through it, and you can have a look, see at what the tessitura is and what's happening in there, and you can kind of see where your trouble spots may end up being. Yeah, how much or how little you have to learn. Uh, Sectioning it off. I mean, people. I try to translate before I listen to too many recordings. I like that just because you can get an idea in your head of what it's supposed to mean, and then it's not that. So trying to translate and square, if you're doing Italian, square all your doubles and make sure all your stresses are written in. And then I'll listen to recordings for orchestrations, things like that. If I'm in a real pinch, then yes, I will rely more on recordings than I need to. But then just trying to do it and learn it, coach it, bring it to a pianist, and sing it with them, and take it to your teacher. That's and then just try to internalize it, figure out, look things up if you need to, and
You're cutting out a little bit.
oh,
I think
no.
you're like moving it around or something.
Oh, no. Sorry about that.
I just didn't get the last sentence you said.
Oh no, I was just making fun of myself for being like, yeah.
I would agree 100%. I think the first thing you do from a singer's perspective, I think any musician, you mark up that book. I tend to be, I'm audio, I'm visual. I make ridiculous notes in my book. I am always depending on who you're working with and what materials you have. Of course, the first question is, can I mark up the book? Because you can't always. And if I can't mark up the book, then I'm going to go and look and see if I can get another book of my own, download it, print it, whatever I need to do so that I can mark up the book. And then, like I said, I'm writing out my parts. I'm putting arrows, smiley faces. Ojo, I do this Spanish thing where you draw the two eyes and the little J for the nose. Like, look at this, look at this, look at this. I draw stick figures. I draw little pictures of the stage, like where things are. Who am I looking at? Make a note. I'm looking at this person, or I'm poking this person. Yeah, mark up the book, and then playlists. I want to hear if I've got big songs that are songs that people have sung. I want to hear everybody I can who has sung it. I'm gonna pick out my little favorite little things that they do, or figure out how I want to interpret the song or songs. Playlists are important. Like, I mean, I'm from the '80s. Like, I grew up making mixtapes. If playlists are the new mixtapes, that's my jam right there. different versions of the show. If I can find for different versions of the entire show, I'll do that. If you've not seen, going back to Marriage of Figaro, there is Noci. There is is it Croatian? What is it? There is a crazy version from Latvia, I think Latvia, where everything is modernized, and Almaviva is like this Banana Republic dictator, and and his wife is wearing like jumpers, and she's got big beehive hair, and your maid Susanna is in a French maid outfit and high heels. It's fabulous. I'm just telling you, it's fabulous. And the whole thing, all 4 acts are on YouTube. Yeah, I'm gonna watch everything I can, listen to it all the time, mark up that book. That's probably week 1 and week 2 and week 3. It's a lot of that.
Fascinating too. I'm so glad you're all here because you all have such different perspectives to bring to this conversation. And later on, I want to also get into the extra dimension you have doing opera and stage, where you have the blocking to incorporate too. I definitely want to get into how that works as well. But Lindsey, kind of as another representative of the instrumental camp, and you do a lot of conducting as well. So how does your first week with a new piece look?
Yeah, I was going to go into both of those, and especially thinking about opera. I love opera, I have to say. But I've never conducted an opera, unfortunately. Not yet. My kind of first experience with either conducting, looking at a score or a piece for violin, unless it's something I know, like the Bachs I've heard all of my life, right? But the different concertos and things like Shostakovich, when I started Dvorak concerto, or when I'm faced with a new score for conducting, I usually try to like set aside time to really just engage with the music and have like an experience. So sometimes that means making a martini, and I have my pencil, and I like to journal about whatever I'm experiencing. And you know, it's all about the senses for me. So like really just connecting what time of day it is when I'm listening to this piece and where I am. I've had like really cool experiences like in the woods listening to music. Like you think about Beethoven and how he spent so much time in the woods, so being in nature, and I'm from up north. That's really inspiring for me. Or taking the music to the beach and sitting on the sand, or whatever it is. A lot of this music was learned late at night, in grad school with the new score. So once like just really connecting and more comes from that, then I totally mark up the score. With conducting, it's a bunch of colors. Sometimes with violin, it's a bunch of colors as well to get the different lines. And then I'll identify through recordings, like, that sounds hard. Let me start there. Because if you start with the easy parts, you're never going to get through things efficiently. So I a lot of times learn things backwards, because you want to be, when you're at the end, you want to have it so easy because you're going to be tired. That part needs to be really good to go. And sometimes it's called donut practicing, where I'll kind of get something towards the middle of a spot and then work out from there. So like if there's something really tricky between things, just kind of like build it from there. So kind of just depends on what the piece necessitates as far as difficulty, but really getting the spots and then playing it for people. Like I played for my professor tonight, and getting with pianists, doing lots of pre-performances for family, and especially with memorizing Bach, that has been really powerful for me this summer. Just playing in the yard for my dad and my brother and my mom, like that showed me so much. And it's really good to have those people in your life to listen to you play for 20 minutes the same thing, Yeah.
I can attest to that. I can attest that memorizing Bach polyphony is like navigating a mental labyrinth. But yeah, as far as starting a new piece, like I'm of the camp, as far as with regard to recordings, this is something I don't know when I started doing this, but I try to avoid recordings for my first impression and see how much I can glean just from the music on the page. And maybe this kind of came from working with my students because, oftentimes a student might have a favorite recording, and if you ask them why they play a certain way, they'll answer because that's what they did in the recording. But the artist in the recording, they have a valid artistic reason for whatever choice they made. And so if you have the same valid artistic reason to make the same choice, that's great. But if you're playing it just to imitate, well, so that's kind of why I try to avoid too many recordings to kind of skew my view starting off. But once I get a sense of how the piece goes musically and have my own conception to help shape, then that's when I bring in all the different recordings to kind of help glean different ideas. But that's kind of what I like to do when I get the first piece. I just side read through it, get a sense of the tricky spots, which will take more time, and then I can kind of portion out my work schedule on that. So getting into that, we kind of already started to shift into this next part here. As we kind of do our daily work and we have our work routine, how do you organize your work on a piece? As far as, do you have a set schedule every day you practice, or is it just kind of like, when you can find the time to practice, and how do you prioritize what you work on? Small sections, big sections, kind of getting details here or there. What's your organization look like as you work on the piece day in, day out?
I guess I feel like I consider myself unorganized or disorganized. But especially during quarantine, right when it started, I was like, I was not doing that much. It was so sad. I think we were all kind of depressed. We were just like, especially singers, we're like, we're not going to be back around here for a while, and this is really rough. And are we going to just have to find a new thing to do? I don't know. But I started myself just having a voice lesson every week on Zoom, and it was helpful to get back into the thing. If I'm about to do a role that's really tough, when I was doing that Barbara Seville, about 2 weeks before I went, I was singing the role all the way through every single day because I just wanted it in my body. I didn't want to be like worried about it during staging, because staging, I mean, my God, you can get your body so worked up and then you don't even know how you're singing it anymore. And to have a foundation to go in on is good. And it helped me build my endurance. I've had to learn roles while I was at other gigs. So you're just sitting in a hotel room, sometimes with a little keyboard on your phone, which is the worst. And it can be really stressful.
Perfect Piano, is that the app? You have the Perfect Piano?
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah. Can't play chords, y'all. You're just like,
Not with these fingers, no.
yeah. But you find a way. You find coaches. There's ways to do it, and it's not always pretty, and it's not always what you got to do in college. To sit there and luxuriate, you just gotta get it done. And you do it. Yeah. Go for it.
We were saying there, oh my goodness. Would you repeat the question, Jeff?
Yeah, so like talking about kind of your daily kind of routine, how you organize your work on your new piece.
See, I am disorganized. So in general, I just have to take whatever time I can. I'm in the salon quite a bit, doing the hair, and I keep my hands, pretty full at home with things. But in the car, there's lots of singing that takes place in the car. I love working on music in the car. I don't feel like I have to be nice about being loud or whatever sounds I want to make. I can make those in the car with that. And then again, listening to things when I am lying in bed at night, taking that time to really, even if I'm, even if I'm up half the night listening to something 2 or 3 times, I'm still resting, like I don't know how, if you really, that idea of learning by osmosis, but it's just sort of like, even if I'm asleep, like I fall asleep, but that music is still playing. There's this idea, my personal idea is that when I do spend the awake time working on that music, it's not so much that I have to learn that music as I'm recalling that music, because it's in my head. And I loved, Sarah, when you said that about getting it into your body, because that, I think, and Lindsey, would you agree, Jeff, would you agree, with instruments, you have to do that same thing. Like the music gets into your body, whatever physicalities you have that are involved in singing that, whether it's your hands moving or your lips moving, your breathing, your hand gestures, whatever is going on, all of those physicalities I think are important to work on as far as getting the music into your body. That's something I really try to, well, no, I shouldn't say I really try to. I'm starting to work with my students on that idea. We're doing those things, right? We're doing those sort of exercises you do, but I haven't identified that as getting it into your body. But I'm hopeful that when we do get to that stage, my students will recognize, oh, I've been doing that all along. Yeah, that's what that is. I feel this or I feel that when I'm singing or this part or that part. I know that I'm going to behave this way. That's yeah, that's all important. Then what comes after that?
Well, yeah, just to kind of follow up on that too. I totally agree with you, Michael, about the importance of that, and that's kind of what I do when I, preparing my solo recitals. You want to memorize everything for piano recitals. So each day, when you realize that it's not as nice and pretty as it was in college when you were spoiled with all the time to devote, just squeezing in. All right, you got 30 minutes between lessons here. You got this little bit there, and just kind of eating away one little bit at a time to just cram all that music into your head. And what I would do in the process of learning the music, after I get everything fully memorized, I would do every day, if I can't do anything else, I'll at least do a full run through of the entire recital, so that, by the time I perform it for the first time on stage, I've already performed it about 100 times before that. And when I really get fully in there, like I can visualize everything. Like, driving in the car, I can visualize in my mind's eye, the notes on the page of everything going on the keyboard, where every single finger is at any given moment, and audiate what the sounds are for the entire recital all the way through. And I think the word kind of go with what you were saying there before, Michael, is try just to sublimate everything, make sure like everything kind of doable, beneath your conscious level, because it's so ingrained in your body. In essence, that's the purpose of our technique, is to allow ourselves to get out of our own way when we make our music.
People will ask singers or any musician, I guess, how do you make room for new music, right? Like, is all that old music still in your head, and how do you learn a new piece? Is there room left over? And I don't know how that works. I mean, the mind and the memory are amazing things. There's always seems to be more room to put things in there. But what you just said, Jeff, about being aware of what every finger is doing at any given moment, I could tell you, I mean, there are certainly times when I feel like I'm paying a lot more attention to a piece of music than maybe I should or need to. But I can't even imagine the brain power it takes to know what every finger is doing at any given moment in a recital that may last for an hour or longer. That is mind-boggling. That is amazing to me.
Well, I can tell you there's kind of a double-edged sword there, because as you can imagine, when you're visualizing that, you're basically using the visual portion of your brain in a way, And when you're doing it in the car on the drive, you're so involved in, going through your piece that suddenly you realize you're 10 miles down the road. What happened? I think I was driving safely, but
Right. Miss my exit. Yeah. I'm known to miss an exit. That's and I mean, if you're doing those sort of recitals where it's just you, right? I mean, I can generally count on other people on stage. Like, I don't have to have every note memorized. Maybe I do. Like, I probably do. I'm listening to the soprano on stage or whoever it is, and I know the role. I know the part, or generally I do. I don't know every note, but in your head you've got the whole thing. But I don't have to be responsible for remembering all of that because she's out there and she's singing it and it's playing along in my head, and I know, like, I've got about 15 minutes or whatever before I have to, have the new mustache on and be back on stage or whatever's going on, or costume change or whatever it is. So that's, I mean, you got it rough, Jeff. And bless you, honestly. I mean, Sarah, you were mentioning about being able to contact a really good, accompanist so that they can help you with that. That is absolutely one of the biggest parts of being able to learn a piece that you're going to sing, is having somebody who can play it for you and give you room to breathe within that piece. Like, I just want to take these two measures ridiculously slow. Can we just do that and see what happens? And I have had, the pleasure of singing with Jeff accompanying, and I mean, he's just wonderful, and he's always giving you that, maybe you should slow that down. Maybe this phrase, there's an accent here. Here, Michael, breath, circle this, Michael. Jeff is one of the best. I mean, he really is. But I mean, just the accompanist in general is always so important in learning the part and figuring out how you're going to interpret the piece.
And Michael, I'll correct you there. We like to be called collaborative pianists.
Collaborative, yes. Hey, I'm down. Give me your pronouns. It's all good.
Now, Lindsey, how about you? You seem like you have a very kind of organized way of approaching things. Seem like you would have a nice way to kind of structure and engage with your learning process.
Oh yeah, I find that I have to have it in my calendar. I set a reminder for, like, okay, this is the time you can work on octaves. Like, this is when you can do this. Also, because my day is really built up. I teach, 7 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, and then I come home and teach private lessons. Since now we're in COVID time, they're all online. So I have little snippets of spaces, and then when all of that is done, that's when I need to really wake up and use that time to get stuff done, because there's no more of the, like, my first year of teaching, I would come home and, like, fall asleep. I was so tired. But now I just know that, like, my brain needs sleep and structure and organization, because if I have a block of time, like, I'm just gonna practice, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna be a waste of time, because otherwise I might get a little sleepy. So I definitely put reminders in my phone that are really specific of what I'm gonna practice. And I have a huge whiteboard on the wall, it's over there, with little boxes that are, like, specific spots, numbers from the score, what exactly needs to be worked out and what I need to do with them. Because if I can't do it right now, I'll come back to it. And if I have time, extra time, I'll be like, oh, I know exactly what I can do right here. And stuff like starting cold from the middle of Paganini, random spots, you should be able to start from any spot. That's a good practice. And I have 2 of those squares up there. And another thing that I do with repetition, I got from yoga, which is when you do sun salutations, maybe having, like, a collection of rocks, and every time you get through the whole sequence, you take one rock and move it to a different pile, so that you don't have to count, just breathe. And then, every time you move a rock, and by the time you get to the end of the pile, you've done your full sun salutation sequence. So I have a little, it's over there, but like a little bowl full of rings, like different rings that I have. And I just practice with the rings. And I've added a euro coin and a rock in there, so I can do more times of things. But so much is muscle memory that I have to just do things over and over, different ways, different rhythms and stuff to get it in my fingers. Just move my rings. And I'm just like so content doing that, and it just makes practice fly by. So those kind of things that are really structured help me so much and really help my students. Like they love when they get to appear on my whiteboard, when their name gets a few boxes on my whiteboard. They like love being on there, and they're like, "Can you leave it up for the whole week? Yeah, the next lesson." I'm like, got it. I'll get a little spot, but I don't have too much real estate because there's a lot of stuff to practice. But yeah.
I really envy and appreciate that kind of organizational skill. Sarah, back me up. I think singers, like we're not that person.
I definitely know some who are, but I
We know those people. You know
we
those
also,
people.
we also have our limits though of how much time we can spend, and like that's frustrating. It can be for sure. And then you have to like go and just do like note work or language work or whatever. Because yeah.
Yeah, definitely can't have an unlimited block of time. The physicality comes in there, and you have to be aware of if there's pain. I learned that in grad school. Just if there's pain, like honor the pain and do not just keep going because it's not worth it.
Yeah, the saying "no pain, no gain" does
No.
not exist in music. Music, pain, stop.
Yeah.
But it's really important too what you said, Lindsay, about having those kind of small goals and ways kind of to mark your progress in meaningful ways, because it's all about that kind of mental space, the mental way of looking at things. Because you can look at it all as kind of one big monumental task to do the entire thing, to learn the entire role, the entire piece. And until you learn the entire piece, you're failing. You're not there yet, you're failing. And some people have that kind of that the eyes on the prize. But when you kind of break it up into smaller sections, give yourself small, manageable goals, then it's all a matter of today I learn this phrase of music and I make this phrase well, and that's a success. And that way, instead of it being one long road of failure until you finally reach the summit, it's a nice, happy road of small successes the entire way through. And that makes a big difference because some of these things, it's a long road from beginning to when you actually get to, perform the thing. So moving on to our next topic here, kind of really digging into the nitty gritty here. So feel free to go as full nuts and bolts as you want to here. When you hit a really tough spot in your piece you're working on, what's in your toolkit? What are some of your favorite fixes when you just hit one of those spots which gives you trouble? Like, do you use mental chunking? Do you break out the metronome? Do you kind of go try to break it down with analysis? What do you do if you kind of hit one of those trouble spots?
Like just music learning wise or technique wise?
Anything. Like you're learning a piece, you have an obstacle in your path. What do you do to address that obstacle?
I would say usually if it's a music learning thing, it's a rhythm issue or a words issue, and it's just making sure I have it right. I am not above writing beats on the top of a measure.
Oh yeah.
And just getting through there and trying to get the language in there, getting the words to fit. If it's technique, sometimes that stuff can take years to get right. You just don't, there's something, there's like the tiniest bit of your tongue is still holding, and you just have there's so much you still have to shed, and it's just like the process of trying to get that out there. And also trying to be nice enough to yourself to be like, you know what, not everyone is perfect, and you're going to go out there and do it at not an optimal, way for a bit, and someday you will get it. But it's hard to go out there and you just have to shed that and just try not to care what people think, because it can crush you. And I'm preaching to the choir here, but yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with asking for help from someone who knows better. I had a friend in my master's who was a collaborative pianist, but he had his beginnings were in percussion. So I knew if I had a rhythm, I couldn't quite get knock knock always. I was like, yo, John, what's up? And it was, you just find your people and you that know these things better than you do and ask. Hit it, Michael.
It's good to know a percussionist, isn't it?
It's like magical goes on in their minds there.
There's magic. It's yeah. Um, uh, Absolutely. I think first of all, it's identifying. Trying to figure out what is the problem. Am I having? Is it a technique problem? Is it a rhythm problem? I think those are generally going to be, for a singer, that's your biggest issue. That's your biggest roadblock, is when either the rhythm is incorrect or the technique is not correct and you're not sure what's going on there. Writing those numbers, I did 1E and a 2E and a and a. I'm like, and a. That's yeah. And then if it's technique, then you beat it for so long trying to do it the way you think you're supposed to do it, and then you stop and you walk away from it and you pull up some Barbra Streisand and sing that for 15 minutes and get your mind off of it, and then go back. And maybe what I'll do is I'll take the piece and I'll just cover my ears and I'll sing it just as quietly as I possibly can. And sometimes singing something quiet kind of will help me see something like, this is happening here, and so if I can extrapolate that back to full volume, then maybe that helps. Or just singing it differently, changing placement. Am I if you're singing something classical, is it covered? Is it too covered? If you're singing something more contemporary, is it a mix? Is it a head voice heavy mix? Is it a chest heavy mix? Where is that mix? Am I putting too much tension on this? Where do you feel the buzz? I don't know. Where do I feel the buzz? I think it's in my ears. It's my nose. I'm not sure. All of those things, I mean, when you hit that roadblock, those are tools. I guess I would call those my general tools. Barbra Streisand is a big tool. Not that she's a tool, but I use her as a tool when I'm having problems. I'll just step away and sing, Don't Rain on My Parade, and then I feel all better about everything. That's a tool, valid, I think, right? Just sing something else, and then you come back to it. When you come back to it, sometimes you have to walk away from a song. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you just have to put it down and walk away from it and ignore it. And then come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes and ears and some peace and love in your heart, and not hate that piece of music right then. And be nice to yourself, again, think about, make sure you're not doing anything that hurts, and make sure that you're not being hard on yourself, and make sure that you're aware of your limitations. And if I'm going to sing that part and the voice keeps cracking, then you let the voice crack. I mean, new notes don't happen without cracking. So you crack until you figure out how to do that without cracking. Trying to make it sound pretty. That's that was something I wanted to say earlier in reference to something one of you had said, and I don't remember. But a lot of that changed for me. I'm 47 years old. Like at some point, I spent so long trying to learn how to sing pretty. And that was sort of this overarching thing, was like, it has to be pretty. And what defined pretty was so many different things. And this school was saying, or I should say not school, but the opera people were saying, this is what pretty sounds like. The Broadway people say, this is what pretty sounds like. Of course, the Barbra Streisand people think Barbra Streisand is what that sounds like. And then at some point I realized, I've worked really hard. I can sing pretty, and I don't have to all of the time. I can sound funny, or I can sound angry, or I can sound something else. And those things don't have to necessarily be pretty in the sense of, flowery music or whatever. But I think that helps, kind of wrapping your head around that. Not all music is supposed to sound pretty.
And music is fully yeah, about expressing it. It's music is a language, so yeah, it's always saying something. But yeah, it's definitely a good thing to think about there for sure. And Lindsay, as far as wrapping your head around things, with you have an extra dimension or several when it comes to conducting, because you have to also then take responsibility of all the things everyone is doing as well. So how do you approach, especially if you're conducting a really complicated piece, how do you kind of wrap your head around all those different moving parts?
One of the most silly things that I do is I make little cards that say different sections. Violin 2, bass, got the trumpet over there, and I put them on the floor in my room and I conduct to them. I tell that card what to do and gesture at it. It's all about knowing where to put my body and my eyes. If I'm going into, a rehearsal for the first time, usually that's what happens beforehand. Because once you start engaging with real people and you do it over and over, then it becomes natural. But the first step is those note cards on the floor.
You're doing blocking. That's what that is. That's blocking.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Well, my teacher taught me to do that, and I believe that. Yeah. So that's a tool for that, and also just marking up the score so much that the different colors are indicating the dynamics, the energy, practicing the tempo changes, conducting along with the recordings, conducting with pianists, singing a lot, and yeah, for conducting, that's a big thing. And just going through the physical thing, being a teacher now and conducting the orchestra in the high school, part of the whole experience is like getting all the music ready to go, like having all the parts for everyone and distributing and supporting them. Like that whole process is so educational for me about the music, because I have to see it from their perspective. What am I giving them? And that manufactures into what I'm going to be doing, my gestures to help them, and why do I need to be there anyways? I'm not playing, so seeing where they're coming from. And for violin, my tools, I love, Michael, what you were talking about with the changing things up. So definitely doing it quietly, doing it loud, opposites, whatever. My teachers have told me that a lot. Changing the bowings. So if it's separate bows, practice it slurred, do all different things. And then the panacea for difficult passages is to change the rhythms around and practice it long, short, long, short, long, short, long. So the quick change is between two different notes, and then flip it over to short, long, short, long, short, long. And so then those changes, and I do it for a whole bowl of rings, and then I switch it and do it again. And maybe like 3 days in a row if it's like a really hard passage. I mean, Shostakovich, I've been doing that for months because it's just really kind of interesting logical harmonies and melodies that I have to get into my fingers. So the rhythm's huge. The metronome is big. I love my Dr. Beat. If it's an intonation issue, sometimes I'll use a drone for whatever the harmony is of that passage and play all the notes against it, which is lovely in major sevenths. Love that. There's a lot of those. And then slow to fast with Dr. Beat and different alternate rhythms and feeling it in one, trying to just mix things up. I think some people know how to use Dr. Beat a little bit more than I do. There are a lot of things it can do that I don't understand. But it's really loud, so I love the Dr. Beat.
Yeah, lots of metronome, especially that's kind of, and we'll get this later on of when we're in the time crunch. But that's kind of one of my secret weapons too, is metronome. If I have to learn something super fast, but as we kind of continue on, kind of learning our piece and troubleshooting our trouble spots, as kind of track your progress, we've kind of talked a bit about how we have kind of different phases of it. Like for piano instruments, like there's you're learning it and you're working from the sheet music, and then you get to the point where you can again work from memory off of the sheet music, whatever point that comes in. For roles, from my experience with that too, it's largely you do the music first, and then after you have a nice strong foundation musically, then you add in the blocking and everything after that. So we talked a little bit about how there's kind of progress as things are heading towards getting ready. So like say we're over halfway there entering the home stretch. How are things, what is it like when things are starting to gel for you?
I
Go ahead.
okay. I will say, like you're saying, as far as having something memorized, when you can recognize that you have something memorized to the point where you can anticipate, you're anticipating what's coming up in the song. It's like I'm able to be singing this section of my song, and in my head, what's next is lining up, and what's next is lining up, and what's next is lining up. That's always sort of tangible, like that's a good sign there. Like that's important. And then at that point, whether consciously or unconsciously, after you get somewhere, things are memorized and you can anticipate, then I really want to start figuring out what is this story? Who am I in the story? Am I telling the story? Am I in the story? Who am I telling the story to? Who else is in the story? Are you in the story? Is this guy in the story? And putting all of those little bits and pieces together so that you are not just singing notes, but telling a story. And that's when things get really so exciting and magical, and you got hopefully you're in a rehearsal space with a bunch of people and everybody's discussing those things, like, well, I didn't know that I was doing that in this song. Oh, this is what I think is going on. Do you guys know what's going on? Let's figure out what's going on here. Let's make sure that we're on the same page. And you don't even have to be. But are we on the same page? If I'm singing with you on stage, is it important that we both think the same thing is happening? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But let's discuss that and figure out how we're going to do that and how we're going to interact with each other. The interaction is so important. Anytime you are singing with somebody on stage, at least having spent that time building the rapport and the connection with that person, not just with the music, but with the other people that you're singing with on stage, sounding as though you're all in that space together, sounding as though whatever the story is, you are all in the story. There's not some random sound over here. That's all really so exciting, having those moments and figuring those things out. I probably more so than performing, I love that part of the rehearsal process, being with people and figuring those things out.
And that connection is so important, so that when you get on stage, you're all telling a story. You're not just yelling at each other in tune.
Exactly.
Yeah, rehearsal's the playtime. Performance is the work time. People don't get that. They're always like, "Don't you love to do the? And why are you scared? Why is it you? Why are you nervous during this performance?" And you're like, "This isn't the comfortable part."
Yeah. All of a sudden, it becomes a job. Now it's a job.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course that's something that you have to deal with as well, because that does come, like at some point you start feeling like, okay, it's a job. No, it's not just a job. This is something that I love doing, and as much as it may, I might be getting nervous, I might be having these emotions or whatever, because in part because I'm looking at it like it's a job and that feels gross or whatever. but it is something that we all love doing. Otherwise we wouldn't still be doing it, and so
we're scared because we care.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and again, I'm of that school. Like if you don't have some butterflies before you go on, then you're not doing it right. Yeah. You got to have that.
It's interesting to hear. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, finish.
Those butterflies are simultaneously, nervous energy and excited energy. And I think perspective is very important. Like I'm gonna recognize that. I'm gonna say, yep, I got some nerves there, but there's also a lot of excitement, and I'm gonna take that energy and I'm gonna focus it. I'm gonna put it into my performance, and hopefully we're gonna leave everything on stage. And after this is done, I'm gonna feel really great and probably pass out or whatever. But yeah, you deal with those moments.
It's interesting too how hearing you both say about how you almost enjoy the rehearsal process more than the actual performing. And I'm the same way. Like I feel like the most fun is the process of, puzzling out all those details, kind of doing that problem solving together and kind of seeing how things all work together. Like I'd be perfectly happy if you could just do all the rehearsal and all the discovery up to the point and then just move on to the next thing. We don't need to go and perform. We already put in the learning and the work there. We had the fun part.
I mean, what I was saying about how we stopped on our final dress and everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I was like, honestly, it was fine. Like it was baby, like that was ours and it was just for us and it always will be. And that's kind of cool in its way,
It
like,
really is, yeah.
Now, Lindsay, I wonder if you kind of take us into our next little topic here, kind of catching up on the progress of things starting to gel. And is there a certain kind of point where what you look for when you know that you're ready? We're talking, we have gone through the entire rehearsal process and everything, but how do you know you're ready?
I never know I'm ready. I don't think I've ever had that experience yet.
Okay.
It just is what it is, and you pray and you do it. You never feel ready enough, but you know you're ready because it's the time to do it. And then, I believe I'm in the moment, and it's meant to be that I'm in that moment, feeling the way I am, whatever it is. And yeah, I think you get through a stage of things leading up to being ready. There's all of the preparation, and you do the best you can, and then in the moment it's all about that moment being new, because you never know what it's going to be. I mean, someone can have a coughing fit in the middle of your balk and you can't lose your spot, right? And you never knew. You had to be prepared for that. Otherwise I'd have had my dad cough in the middle of my concert in the yard, But and it's through just doing more performances that these things come up. But we're never ready because we can never know what's going to happen.
I don't know. I think that's part of what separates you as a professional, is that whatever happens, you're ready. You've got something in your pocket. You've got something in your toolbox that will fix, hopefully, whatever happened there or whatever that was. You've got your wits about you, your wherewithal, and it's live, and things go wrong, and lights don't come on, or mics don't come on, or the band doesn't start playing, or whatever. Something happens, or I'll forget a song. Things happen, and then you just do something.
You get really paralyzed by that. I know, for a long time I just assumed if I forgot a word or something that I would forget the rest of the show and I would just be doomed. You see other people make mistakes all the time. It's not a big deal at all. No one has been taken out and shot for it. It's fine. It's just
not in a long time anyway.
Yeah, they changed the laws a while ago.
I have I will mess up a song. And you just own it, I can remember doing a performance. The audience is very, very close. We're singing some old standard kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure I was singing Begin the Begin. And I decided to jump to the second verse instead of singing the first verse. And so I'm singing the song. I know the song very well. I clearly recognize while I'm singing that I've just jumped to the wrong part of the song. And in my head, I'm doing the math, right? In my head, I'm like, carry the two, flip these lines, and this is all going to be fine. And while I'm doing the math on stage as I'm singing, I notice this woman out in the audience was singing along. And now she looks very confused.
Mm.
And so I stopped the piano. I said, I stop, everything, just stop playing. I'm really sorry, everybody. I'm going to apologize to you. I messed this song up. I skipped from the first verse to the second verse, and I was totally going to keep singing and not tell any of you. But that woman right there knows that I messed up. So because of her, I have to start over. And and she turns bright red and busts out laughing.
Oh.
And I started the song, and everybody clapped, and they were like, "Cool." And we went back and started the song over. And I sang correctly, thankfully. But I mean, I think, especially if you have the opportunity when you're performing live, to just be real with the audience, take the opportunity. Maybe not every opportunity, but if you take the opportunity, sing. Come up here and sing the song. You come up here and help me sing this song. Don't do that. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, that's as far as dealing with nerves, for me, that's always a thing too. If you've got a fourth wall that you have to deal with, then you have to deal with the fourth wall. But if I'm doing something where I don't have to deal with the fourth wall, I'm talking to the audience. I'm talking to you. We're gonna get to know each other, because that just makes me feel better. That's it's all about me. I mean, I'm the one up there. No, it's about the experience, the story, and everybody, the audience, has their part in all of that.
It makes everybody more relaxed too.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's kind of the beauty of live performance too, is it's always different. No one wants the McDonald's performance where it's the exact same product every time, or the Target performance where it's the exact same floor plan every time. But it's always different. You can do all the preparation you need to, which gives you the tools to deal with that effectively with grace without letting it flush to you. Just a quick point, for me personally, when I kind of know that I'm about as prepared as I can get, is if I can play the entire program through eyes closed. If I can do that, then I have a pretty good sense. I can visualize things, and even if it's big jumps or whatever it is, if I can do it all eyes closed, then I have it pretty well there, that I feel like I can go on stage and deal with whatever happens. Now, we've been talking a bit about kind of as you get on stage, stage anxiety, that kind of thing. Just wanted to share one quick little thing I picked up from some of the stuff I did with PAMA. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I know Lindsey is. It's the Performing Arts Medicine Association. And one of the talks, one of the people who has a lot of experience with kind of like brain chemistry and how the brain impacts performance. I believe I'm saying this correctly, that neurologically in the brain, what happens when we feel anxiety, neurologically, it's the same as what happens when we get excited. The same things are happening in our brain. And so if we just make that little mental shift of, I'm not anxious, I'm excited, that makes a big difference there. And also, going back to the entire process of preparation, if you know what to expect, that also helps too. For my students, when they're getting ready for a recital, sometimes I'll have them to simulate the feeling of, get that adrenaline going also there. I'll have them run a lap, come back and play their piece with their heart rate elevated, and see if they can cope that way. But yeah, it's all about the preparation, the experience, to know what to expect, to know how to deal with that. And yeah, oftentimes you might be rewarded with a unique and special experience, like with a lady, Michael, when you noticed her getting confused with the lyrics there, and then you had a special moment you might not have had otherwise. So
absolutely.
So any other tips you guys have as far as the experience either of stage fright, anxiety on stage, or overcoming that, or any other kind of lessons you learn through the actual performing?
I used to, oh gosh, if the people in charge happen to see this, they may come looking for me. But with Opera Tampa, anytime there was some new person in the course, I would pull them aside at some point and I would say, if you forget what you're doing, or forget your blocking and where you're supposed to be, just move center stage under the spotlight. If you're not supposed to be there, somebody will yell at you. And if nobody yells at you, then you're in the spotlight and just take it. It's terrible advice, but it was fun for me. And I don't think I ever got anybody into any real trouble with that. You know, I have a couple of mottos, theatrical mottos. One from my high school theater teacher. And I'm pretty sure she was 100% being honest when it was the end of final dress. And she said, sink or swim, my job is done. And you're like, oh shit, yeah, okay. You know, and you have to recognize, did you put in the time? Did you put in the time? You know if you did or not. If you didn't put in the time, I think, you know, all of us here, like if you know you didn't put in the time and you're going on stage, you know what that feels like. It doesn't feel good. If you know you put in the time, if you know you did, and you're walking on stage and you've got those nerves, it's okay. It's all right, because you know you put in the time. I'm going to trust myself. You have to just trust that you're going to do what you need to do out there.
You've earned it. You've
earned it. And then my other favorite motto is, in theater, in all performance, especially working with other people in community settings, set a very high bar and then help everybody reach it. You know, if everybody in that setting is helping everybody else to be and do better, then that's only going to make you feel better about what you're doing. So I guess that's a tool, really, you know, for dealing with that, is stop thinking about yourself for a minute and go help somebody else. Mm-hmm. See how that works.
I like stretching a lot before a performance.
Oh goodness, yes.
That like takes me out of it a lot. This is a little embarrassing, but I've had some like pretty serious issues with stage fright. I get like little Pepto-Bismol tablets, and I will just pop one before a performance, just if anything for a placebo effect, to just be like, your tummy's gonna be fine. Like I try not to eat that much before a performance because I get so freaked. And it's getting better now, but there were like a couple years there where I was like, oh girl, no. it was pretty scary.
Yeah, totally, like the not glamorous but real thing. Yeah, make sure you go to the bathroom before you go on stage.
I mean, it's that. I mean, I hate to say this, but don't trust anyone for your entrance cues because they may not be there. But yeah, you're so right about, you know, looking out for your colleagues and being there for them, because that is like, if I'm alone, if it's just me on stage, it's hard. If I can be there for someone and be their contact and like be something for them, like that halves it. Absolutely. It's just, yeah.
And Lindsey, you have kind of the, I guess you've experienced a few different facets of this, you know, playing with the orchestra, you kind of, you know, in among all your comrades and everyone. But when you're conducting and you're on the podium, I mean, you have sole power over the downbeat. All eyes on both sides of the stage are on you. Does that ever kind of make you feel nervous at all? Did you just kind of own it and go with it? How do you deal with that kind of responsibility?
Definitely breathing. Gotta breathe. Gotta connect and see people in their eyes, especially my students. And just not disconnecting from my body, like really being there and trying to keep coming back if I'm going somewhere else in my head. Gotta be like, just catch it and come back. And I think this applies for violin and conducting or anything. that if I start getting nervous about something or wondering if I'm gonna remember it, if it's by memory, um, just really focusing on the music and letting the music just like pull me through, because it's more than just like, I like to connect with the audience in between the songs when I'm talking to them and looking at them, but when I'm playing, if I connect with the music, that will speak to the audience. Or if I'm conducting, you know, so it's like in that moment, I just try to really zero in on the phrase, whatever's happening in the music.
Connections are so important, and like you said, breathing, you know, those, and I mean, I think that's like some of the stuff that you're talking about, Jeff, as far as, you know, in that toolbox. Breathing, no matter what. I mean, always make sure you're breathing, because we'll stop. Like, you stop breathing, and you don't even realize that you've stopped breathing. I mean, I'm not making that like, it's not just me, right? Everybody, like, you just stop breathing, and you have to remember, like, okay, how do I do open your mouth, inhale, take a breath. Make sure your knees aren't locked. Make sure, make sure, you know, like, do some stretching, do whatever you need. Make sure you're relaxed. Make sure you're present in the moment. Make sure you have, if you've got those nerves, you know, like Jeff, I think that's a very valid thing. Like, there's a switch there, and you can play with that switch to get that from the nervous to the excited, and it takes some work, you know, convincing yourself, but you can do it. We all do
You
it.
tap into that Alexander technique, find the tension and let it go.
You know, even if you don't necessarily believe yourself, just keep saying it until you do. Get out there and do it.
All right, so we're almost done here. It's been such a great conversation. I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I don't want to take up any more of your time than want to be faithful to your time here. So, one last point about this kind of trajectory. Picking a brand new piece, tackling the first approach of it, learning it, hashing through any of the trouble spots, getting on stage and performing it. When it comes to maintenance of a piece, say you have a show run or you have a tour, what does that look like for you? Like, do you just check in on your trouble spots here or there? Do you just kind of try to visualize away from actually performing it? Or how do you do it full run-throughs? How do you kind of maintain a piece if you need to keep it in top shape for a longer period?
I was a resident artist with Utah Opera for 2 years, and we did a school show, and this is an accurate number, somewhere around 500 times. We did the same show, but and you learn to just do the thing and keep it the same, and especially for singers, I think it's easy for us to be like, oh my gosh, it's the day of the show, I have to like be in perfect weather and drink all the tea and stuff like that. And an experience like that really like takes, I don't know, you don't treat yourself like you're glass anymore, and you're like, every single day I have to phonate for these children. It's gonna have to happen whether I'm feeling it or not. So go do it. And there was a day I had like a stomach flu, and I got through the show because it was just like you're doing it like a robot. You just have done it so much. But I don't know, we always kind of kept it fun, and it was just, connection is the kind of thing in a show that's going to keep it fresh always, because no one's in the same place every single day. And there's something to be said for consistency, but there's also, you know, there's life in a piece, and you have to like honor that and be aware of it, and be aware of like how your colleagues are feeling, and we'll adjust to that. But yeah.
That's a really wonderful, you know, that's a really great thing when you're doing a run, and it's live and it's alive. And so, you know, tomorrow night, you know, the soprano may decide that she's doing something a little bit different, and go with it, you know what I mean? And say something about that. That was amazing. Oh my God, where'd you come up with that? That was brilliant. And that keeps it exciting, of course. But you also, you know, if you can find those moments, if you're that person who is like, you know what, I'm going to change the run in, you know, that part of the song, and I'm going to take it up this, you know, I'm going to sing the big high note, right? The big finish note, or whatever. And see what happens. And maybe they fire me. I don't know what's going to happen. you take those moments, take those opportunities. If you have that space, if you have that freedom, take advantage of that, because you don't always. We know that you don't always have the freedom to be creative in the run of a show. So if you do have that opportunity, that's something I think you should do. But you have to pace, right? If you know that you're going to be performing every night, or 3 nights or 4 nights a week every week for some extended period of time, then you pace. You're like, okay, you identify. You already know at that point. You already know what those sections are, and you've got your if you're me, you've got your little book, and then everything is in there, and then in the back of the book, all the problem sections are in the back of the book, and you work on those, and you work on those, and you work on those, and you get them as relaxed as possible and as smooth and gentle as possible, so that when you do have to get on stage and have some tension when you're singing, then you're aware of that tension, or you're aware of whatever it is that you're doing, and you pace yourself. I'm gonna save everything else. I've got this big note here, and I've got a big note over there, and I've got this whole big section over here, and everything else we'll just take it as easy as we can, so that when I get there, then you've got that. First of all, you've got the juxtaposition, but then also you've got the energy saved up, and the self-care there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said. That's making me think, like, giving the music space to breathe, like focusing on those big moments, and it's just kind of opening up the other space for like big runs of when I was doing pits for operas and musicals, and I can think of when I was in undergrad, we did Amal and the Night Visitors every Christmas. And I just knew the whole thing, all the words, all the notes, everything, because we just did it so many times. And we would just play jokes, like play games between stand partners, like change the bowings and try to catch up with each other. Do like one part with the same finger for the whole thing. These are very like in college, what to be amused. I don't do that professionally anymore, but still, like, those little moments come in, just like connecting with a stand partner if I'm playing in an orchestra or whatever, a pit, or just you play a little game. You've done it, it by heart. You're gonna do like a little trick on each other and try to throw the other person off, or just jousing a little bit, having fun. It's about having fun, and beyond that, without even being silly, just being present. Like you're saying, you're going to notice when something's different in another section, being really aware of that, and just really opening my ears and listening, just really listening.
I got called in a handful of years back to sing Balthazar. And when I got to the part in the book where it goes down to E flat 2, I circled that. I took a picture of it. I put it on Facebook. I'm like, what? WTF is this? Who is singing this note? Who is singing E flat 2? Who is that? And I worked on it, and I worked on it, and worked on it. And we only had one performance of the show, thank goodness. But in performance, I in every rehearsal, it was just quiet and so airy and just not. And in performance, it came out and it resonated. It didn't resonate much, but it resonated. And I was standing on stage, and my very good friend standing in front of me, who was singing the one with the candy box.
This is my box.
Yes. He just, instead of going on with the show at that point, he stops. We're about to walk into the house. He stops, he turns around, he doesn't lift his head, he just puts his hand out, takes my hand, shakes my hand, and then turns around and goes on with the show. And I was like, yes. It's like, God damn, no. And then the following day, I got incredibly sick. So I know I didn't have that note on my own. It was only because I was getting sick. But it was there. It happened. And God bless America. E flat 2. It's, I've hit it. It's not on my resume. It will never be on my resume. but I hit it.
All right, so we're in our last couple questions here. Now, this one's kind of going to be a fun little thing. This is not bragging. This is taking ownership of all the hard work we've put in for the hours and hours to turn our talents into skills. What is your superpower, as it were? What is it that kind of you just feel like, either from gift or just from hard work, whatever it is that you just plain is your strongest point, your superpower? Like for me, for example, as you think about your answers there, for me it's memory, my ability to memorize music. It's always been strong. I had a strong muscle memory, but I had to kind of catch up the other forms of memory to reinforce that, from analysis, listening, audiovisual. But like for instance, my last recital program, I went back to revisit pieces I had played when I was younger. So in undergrad, before I played a Chopin ballade, which I first learned back at the end of high school. So it was like 15 years ago that I hadn't even really looked at it since then. And Beethoven Sonata, again, that was during my undergrad, so it'd been over 10 years ago. I maybe had read through them once or twice in the intervening decade, but I hadn't studied them since then. But because there's still this bit of muscle memory and whatnot still percolating up here, I was able to actually memorize both of those pieces, about 39 pages of music in just 3 days. And I mean, that was a big surprise, because they're old pieces I had done before, but it's amazing how much work was still there. Normally on like a new piece, I can maybe go, if I'm really, really in it, I can memorize about 1 page an hour. And for me, that's kind of my superpower that I've gotten just from all the hard work and everything I've put in there, that just being honest about it, I know that not everyone can do. So what about you guys? What would you call your superpower? Just own it. What's your superpower?
I always kind of go back to, as much as I love being up in front, and you put me up in front, if you put me in the front of the stage, then I will do my best to do what I'm supposed to do. But if you put me in the back, I can make sure everybody does what they're supposed to do. I love ensemble work. I love the camaraderie. I love corralling, the chorus, the ensemble. Like, okay, everybody's over there here now, and we're going over there. Now we've got this costume change. Those people need to change their wigs. These people need this. Those people need that. Let's make sure everybody has what they need. We have to be backstage, queued up to go on stage by this, the 30-second measure of that song. I'm never that organized, but that's my superpower. Put me in the front, I can only do me. Put me in the back, I can make sure everybody's on.
Awesome.
I don't know if we say if it's technique wise or what.
Absolutely.
If I'm just talking technique, I can sing real fast. I have coloratura. That's a thing I can do.
Oh, love.
And that's but otherwise, I mean, I think I'm very good at staying enthused. I don't know. I just I don't know. There's very little I won't do. And I think I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm try almost everything once, and I really like interpreting new opera. I love it. That's like my favorite. I like to do
that. Well, I'm just thinking of things that people have mentioned to me after concerts or whatever. It's good to know intonations there. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but just specifically when people comment on that, it feels good. Because violin is hard. So singing with intonation. Piano and intonation. You got a free pass.
Not a tune, not our fault.
and playing with piano is different intonation. So I do got work to get the different spacings So intonation. I've also been complimented on my ability to break down passages for practicing. Just people walking around, if I was practicing in music school, like, wow, you have so many ideas about how to practice, which may be that I run away with too much practicing instead of actually running through it. But I was able to share those ideas. I'm able to keep my students practicing with them. And when I was in school, helping people out in orchestra with like, oh, here's a way you can work out like Bartok's Symphony for Orchestra is just so crazy and needs a lot of kind of dissecting. So I'm a good dissector.
That's definitely a great skill to have. It's so, so helpful. All right, so on to our last question here. Thank you so much for chatting. It's been such a great conversation. Hope that you're willing to come back and chat again sometime. Last thing I want to just touch on before we finish for tonight. We've talked a lot about all the work that goes into doing music at a high level, but just to finish with tonight, just for fun, let's think, what is one thing that you love the most about music? Kind of what keeps you going? Because certainly when we chose to do music and follow this path, it's not because this is the easy path, or and then you don't go into music to become rich and famous. So there's got to be something to get you in there. So what is one thing you really, really love about music and about doing music, being able to do music? What's one thing?
Just feels right. It's hard to describe. I don't know. There's just something about it that you're like, I like that, and that feels good, and that's that. I don't. Yeah.
I think that's I would yeah, I would go along with that. You know, it's not something that you can really put your finger on, but I think because all of us know the work that does go into it, the way you were saying it, Jeffrey, the what it costs. So I forget exactly how you were putting that, but the price of learning a piece. Like we all know what goes into that, and we all understand. We've all gotten to a point where we understand the value of that time and energy. Very few things in the world feel as good as getting it right. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, you're playing the piece, or you're singing the song. Very few things, I think, in this whole world feel really quite as good as just that sensation that, I mean, I would love to say that sensation that you nailed it. I don't know how often we all feel that, but that you came close. You came really close. It was so, yes, there was, of course, that could have been better, or that could have been, but it was good. It was good. That's it right there, I think, for me. It feels great.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of describing the same thing. It's the feeling, the physicality of it. I was thinking about the story of Heifetz, how after he retired, he still woke up every morning to play scales. First thing, you know. And it's that physical, always improving, and it just, right, it feels good to nail it, whatever it is. But also the pursuit of it is, it's like a drug. You just like you always want to go for it, and it's like a reason to live for. And the other thing I was going to throw in there is just the life surrounding making music, the opportunities to travel, the opportunities to meet people and connect with people, the whole thing, everything that comes along with doing the music.
And those people, you know, I mean, being around like-minded people, being around people who enjoy the same thing that you do. Singing a piece, I'm thinking of the Inajamo as an example from Cavalleria. When you've got, you know, whether it's, I mean, hopefully not 10 people, but if you've got 20 people or maybe 40 people or 50 people on stage, and you're singing the Inajamo al Señor from Cavalleria, and you can feel the piece breathing, and everybody is coming in when they're supposed to come in, and the orchestration is all coming in when it's supposed to come in. I mean, that is just, you're just like floating in space. the sensation is ethereal. For me personally, that that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, supposed to be doing, and you can see on their faces. I mean, I take stock all the time. I know you're not supposed to be staring at other people on stage, but I will look around. I'm like, she is killing it over there. Look at, and she's feeling it. And this guy over here is crying, and I mean, you can, the angels, the sky is parting. The Inijamo is such a wonderful big piece, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It starts out with the whispering, right? Like everybody's and it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and I love that.
It's a huge teamwork effort, and there's nothing, you're never alone. I mean, especially in opera, there's so many moving parts. And does anybody else feel the historical connection in a moment like that you think you're like a living piece of history? Like that to me, is always like it kills me.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing about, specifically about, classical music, is that connection to, the 1800s or the 1700s, like you just feel amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
And in a very real way, with music, in a way almost nothing else can be, is when you are fully in it and performing it with anything, you're truly touching history, because when it's done right, it'll sound the same way it sounded when it was first performed there. And I oftentimes tell people, when I talk about what I do and all this stuff, that the beauty about doing music, and this is true in other areas as well, but our experience a lot in that Western European tradition of every day we get to work on, while some people go to work and they work on, accounts or spreadsheets, what have you, we get to work on every single day the fruits, the products of the most intense concentration, distilling the most profound human emotions done by some of the greatest minds to ever walk the face of the earth. I mean, come on.
Well, when you put it that way.
That's my new lower back tattoo.
Yeah. Ooh, wow.
Yes.
That's some ink right there. Yeah. I like that.
Maybe find a little pithier way to say it, otherwise it'll be a low back around the front tattoo.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much all for joining me. This has been such a great conversation. I've so enjoyed talking with you, hearing your points of view. We'll be back again next week with 3 more fascinating artists to get more viewpoints on this. So thanks so much, and we'll see you all next time.